Welcome back to Standard 9A. This is the second part of the presentation on this standard, and we are trying to continue citing developments of the Industrial Revolution and explain how they brought about urbanization and social and environmental changes. Again, urbanization is the process of growing and creating cities. Okay, so quite a lot in this standard, which is why we needed two parts to get through it all. The essential question for this portion of the standard is, how did the Industrial Revolution produce changes in culture and in society? So we'll take a look at a couple of different things here in this presentation. Our first piece of essential understanding is that advancements in technology led to the Industrial Revolution. The change that took place in the late 17 and 1800s in society and culture was largely due to advancements, new inventions in technology. Not unlike our current day, we think about the way all of our devices and our gadgets, our electronics are changing the way we live today. Same sort of thing, the inventions and the devices were different, but they also produced changes in the culture and in the society of the time. Okay, the essential knowledge, the first bit we're looking at here is to know the technological advances that produced the Industrial Revolution. Obviously, there are hundreds. We couldn't possibly address them all. The standards lay out four in particular that we want to know. Okay, the first, really in many ways the most important, the invention that kicks off the Industrial Revolution was the steam engine invented by an English guy named James Watt. Okay, and the steam engine, as we see here, really was the first device besides human power or animal power or natural power, wind power, the power of a stream. This was the first machine really that provided power. Okay, you are no longer dependent on the power of a person, an animal, the wind. Now there was a machine, a device that could produce power. And quite simply, for all the time that humans had been around, Watt was the one who kind of, other inventors contributed as well, but Watt gets credit for realizing that if you've ever boiled water for spaghetti, or for any other reason on the stove, that steam is a form of energy. Heat is a form of energy. And if they could just capture that steam, it could then be used to produce energy. Okay, you could then get that really hot water producing steam, and as we see in the diagram here, it could power a pump. It could be attached to a wheel, it could be attached to a sewing needle, and it could then do the work that used to require a human being, an animal, or nature itself to do. Okay, so the steam engine really is the key invention to starting the Industrial Revolution. The second invention we need to know was a guy named James Hargreaves, who invents the spinning jenny. Okay, and the spinning jenny, really kind of a early mechanical sewing machine, we can think of in this sense. Before the spinning jenny, one weaver, one person sewing, you typically see this in movies and TV shows set in the old days. Somebody sitting there, a seamstress pressing on the pedal, making the wheel move and the needle go. Again, a human's going to get tired. A human's going to need bathroom breaks, going to need food breaks, they're going to need to go to sleep. But now with the spinning jenny, one person is able to do far more work than they could possibly do just on the one spinning wheel. Okay, so the spinning jenny, like a lot of these inventions, is going to revolutionize the textile or clothing industry. Okay, our third invention is the cotton gin, invented by an American inventor named Eli Whitney. If you've ever seen cotton grow in the wild, it does contain little seeds, and those little seeds, the removal of those seeds caused the process of turning the cotton into clothing to be much longer. Okay, and whenever something takes longer to do, fewer products are going to be made. Fewer products mean higher costs. Typically, only rich people could afford cotton clothing. What the cotton gin did was it pulled the cotton through almost a comb. We could feed the cotton with the seeds in it at the top, and the machine then would pull it through these combs, okay, dump out the seeds and pull out on the other side clean cotton without the seeds in it. This is going to speed up the process of making cotton clothing, and it's going to really increase the amount of cotton grown. Okay, we'll talk more about the cotton gin and its social effects in Standard 9C. Another inventor we need to know is a guy named Henry Bessemer, and the Bessemer process today is still the process for making steel. Steel is not a natural product. Steel comes from iron. And the idea with the Bessemer process is it's a number of steps where they take the iron, they melt it down. Like all metals, it has a melting point. They turn it into a liquid. They add carbon and some other things to the iron to make it even stronger. And the end result is steel. The tall skyscrapers that we have today, the railroads, all sorts of things depend on steel. And Henry Bessemer comes up with the process for making it. Okay, our second piece of essential understanding is while the advancements in technology were starting the Industrial Revolution, advancements in science and medicine were altering the lives of people in these new industrial cities, these urban areas created during the Industrial Revolution. Okay, to alter is to change. So these science and medicine was changing the lives of people for the better. This is really one of the big advantages, big positives of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so our essential knowledge for this portion of the standard is to know these medical advances during the Industrial Revolution. And again, there are many of them, but the two that the standards want us to know were the smallpox vaccine by Edward Jenner. Okay, so think back to Standard 4. The Native Americans would have greatly benefited from the vaccine, basically the preventative thing to keep the disease from happening in the first place. Smallpox was an incredibly deadly disease, one of the deadliest viruses that humankind has ever faced. As we saw, as we mentioned, the Native American population almost completely wiped out by this disease. And as we see in this picture, this was a guy, I think in Illinois, about 100 years ago. You could just see if it didn't kill you, it could leave you terribly disfigured. It was something people really lived in fear of, and it was a disease that changed history in many ways. Thanks to Edward Jenner, though, it's a disease that's pretty much wiped out. Okay, with a simple shot now, the disease, it's one of the very few viruses that humans have basically conquered. Okay, that you don't really have to worry from any natural source of getting smallpox. The other scientific advancement we need to know was the discovery of bacteria and the process of neutralizing it developed by Louis Pasteur. Okay, so bacteria observed under the microscope, and kind of the connection that illness and all sorts of bad things happen because of bacteria. Especially for the process of making dairy products safe. Historically, dairy has been very dangerous for humans because, again, bacteria left unchecked to grow in dairy products, whether it's milk or cheese or other dairy products, has typically made humans sick. Milk today and dairy products typically considered healthy because the pasteurization process, next time you pick up a carton of milk in the cafeteria, you'll probably see the word pasteurized, meaning it went through a process of boiling the milk to kill off the bacteria before it was put in the carton or turned into cheese or yogurt or any other kind of dairy product. Okay, our last part of the standard is to know some of the impacts of the Industrial Revolution. We have a few of them here we'll go through quickly. Because of these medical advancements, we do see the world's population explode over the past 200 years. We see here world population going back over 1,000 years. We could go back 1,000,000 years, and the first part of that line wouldn't have been much different. Okay, there was less than 1 billion people on Earth. There was less than the population of China today in the entire world for almost all of history up until about 200 years ago. Okay, and as we can see on our chart here, that very quickly explodes after 1800 thanks to these medical device advances. That's largely due to the increase in life expectancy. Again, we can see for most of human history, the average years of life expectancy, you were lucky to make it to 30. Okay, as a high school student, you'd be considered middle-aged throughout most of history, but we see that go up very quickly to the point that throughout the world now, approaching 70, and in advanced countries approaching 80 years now. Okay, we also see improved transportation. Go back to somebody like George Washington. He had a choice for transportation of walking or riding on his horse, and that was pretty much the choice throughout most of history. Now we're going to see steam trains, steamboats, eventually automobiles, later on airplanes, and all sorts of things. So transportation is going to greatly improve. We see the growth of the middle class. Historically, you had rich and poor. Okay, but now with the Industrial Revolution, we really see the emergence of a new group of people. Not super rich, but at the same time not living day-to-day poor. Okay, so the middle class begins to emerge here during the Industrial Revolution. We start to see increased education. Okay, the reality is before about 100 years ago, chances are you would have been a worker of some sort. You would have been working on a farm, you would have been working in a factory. Okay, picture yourself in the faces of these kids and picture your friends in these kids. The idea that today there's an emphasis on helping you to develop your skills and abilities and not putting you in a factory or locking you into a farm job. We see the increased value of education. We see that again going back about 100 years. Relatively few people had high school degrees, okay, and now well over about 70% of teenagers get their high school diploma. Okay, again, an emphasis on increased education. Okay, the increased standard of living for many but not for all. Standard of living referring to the nicer things in life that make life more pleasant, whether it's, I don't know why I use the example here of a bathroom here. Maybe 100 years ago this was the standard of living, was an outhouse. Today this would be, you know, maybe a high standard of living bathroom. Things like indoor plumbing, air conditioning, central heating in the house, these are all things that increase and improve the standard of living, but again, not for all. Okay, not for all in any country and not for all around the world. Okay, but for many, the increased standard of living. Okay, our next one here is we have increased urbanization. The world is much more urban, living in cities. Historically, people typically lived in country, rural areas like this. Okay, today most people live in, if not cities, in suburbs. We see here the U.S. population in 1700s was relatively rural. Okay, and that's going to increase very quickly here to the point where about 80% of Americans now live in cities. And our last, good thing my battery is running out, is environmental pollution, one of the big negatives. Farmers back in the 1700s really couldn't produce that much pollution. Okay, but because of the factories and the methods of making products and the way we consume and throw things out, there's much more environmental pollution. And that concludes Standard 9A.